Hi, welcome back to Handful of Stars. I am your host, Helene Saucedo, owner and reader of Handful of Stars. Today, we're going to talk about the writer's triangle. We've already looked at the heart line, the headline, and sometimes these lines will converge to form other marks. So a writer's triangle is on the hand at the end of your headline. If there is a little fork that comes off, and then it is closed by what is called the line of Mercury, which is also the line of health, but it will form a triangle at the end of your headline. I have it on both hands, and of course I have my book coming out this year in October. So I wanted to bring on a guest today that also has the writer's triangle. I'd like to introduce my good friend Kelly Benning. Hi, thank you for being here.
Glad to be here, thanks.
So I've read your hands twice in the camper, maybe more than that. But then I looked at your hands again, and I noticed that you did have this writer's triangle on both of your hands. So tell me what you use writing for, how that works with you, who you are, what you do, that kind of thing.
So I feel like sometimes I do a little bit of a dual life. So in my daytime job, I work as a grant writer with a public health focus. So nearly all of my clients are federally qualified community health centers, and I write their federal grant packages. So this is like very detail-oriented, very much business writing.
Right.
It's not really anything that makes my heart sing, although I do really believe in the cause.
Of course.
But in my personal life and my spiritual life, writing has always served almost like a ritualistic kind of function.
Okay.
It's a way for me to really tap into where I'm at in any given moment. It's a way for me to access my own intuition and to write that down in a way that I can go back and really process it again and decide what to do.
Right. That's extremely beautiful. But you have also told me that you are a high priestess.
I am.
So tell me about that.
Yes. So for me, the high priestess is a person who has given themselves over to the descent, has had an experience of coming to the brink of who they are and almost like coming to the edge of a cliff and jumping. And in so doing, reaches down into the underworld, confronts themselves. And really, it's almost like this idea of standing naked.
Right.
I tied very much to the goddess Inanna. And so there's the story, The Descent of Inanna, where she basically goes to the underworld and is standing at the gates and is told that no one who enters the underworld can emerge unscathed. And she enters into the underworld, and she's stopped at 7 gates along the way. So at the very first gate, she has to give her crown. So it's the crown of heaven, and that's the toll she has to pay to enter into that gate.
Okay.
And she comes to the next, and she has to shed an item of clothing. And so by the time she's in the center of the underworld, she is stripped completely naked, standing alone. And she is confronted with her sister, Ereshkigal, who is the queen of the underworld. Okay. And in this myth, she is basically told that Ereshkigal is going to take her and keep her there forever. But the story is ultimately this story of those two identities fusing. So it's almost like they're two sides of the same coin. And to me, that high priestess archetype is that representation. It's going down into the underworld, confronting your shadow, confronting the darkest parts of who you are, and merging, integrating with that so that you can then rise up again and be here.
Right.
And then shepherd others on their own journey of descent.
So we have something pretty big in common.
We do.
That's very bonding.
Yes.
And that is that we were both married.
Yes.
To men for long periods of time. I was married for about 9 years. How long were you married?
14.
14 years.
Yeah,
you have 3 children.
I do.
3 boys. I have 1 little girl. So was that when you went to that dark place, when you were leaving your husband to reemerge?
Yeah, I think for me that process really did start about 2 years before my divorce. Oh man, I just resisted it. You know, resisted it so much. And I think for me, it's like I can reach back probably 2 years prior to the divorce and see the seeds of it and see how that evolved over time. But for me, that it was 2016. So it was that moment of, it was a point of no return, right? It was like either I was going to take the red pill or the blue pill, right? I was either going to wake up and that was going to require dying basically to the life that I had created for myself, or I was going to have to go on pretending. And for me, it was like, I also was at this point where honestly, my life felt like a scratchy mohair sweater. You know, I just needed to get it
just uncomfortable.
off. Right.
Just
it was
done.
so uncomfortable. Right. And I wanted to jump out of my own skin.
Yeah.
And I had to choose, you know, I had to
Mm-hmm.
choose between this path of feeling like I was supporting others and making others happy,
Mm-hmm.
or actually choosing my own authenticity and integration.
Right.
And that was an incredibly hard choice.
Oh, yes,
for
I
me
know.
at
It
the
was
time.
very challenging, and I know it was hard for you too, because you're doing it for yourself to make yourself happy, but you're
Right.
getting a lot of judgment and
So
a lot
much.
of pressure from everybody.
Yes.
When I left my husband, he basically outed me to everybody, and I'm like, that's my decision.
Right.
That's my personal information.
Yes.
But also, I do want to mention that you were really there for me when I did officially come out of the closet last year on National Coming Out Day. I think I messaged you right before.
You did.
And then you were like, anything you need, call me after.
Yep.
So that was really special to me. But talking about, you know, this work of coming through
Mm-hmm.
your marriage and divorce, and bringing that back to the writing.
Yes.
You shared with me something that you
Mm-hmm.
wrote that really helped you.
Yes.
Kind of comes to terms with that.
Yes.
Do you have that with you?
I do. I have that with me. Sure, so I'll share it. So just by way of background, for me, I think a huge part of kind of like integrating this experience was deciding that I didn't waste 17 years of my life when I was with my ex, right? And that it wasn't lost time. It wasn't negated. And so I needed to make peace with that person that I was. And so for me, writing is the pathway to try to do that, right? So I did this series of letters to my former self. So my married name was Huckabee, last name. So I did a series of letters to Kelly Huckabee. And
when did you do those?
Oh man, I started in 2016 and did it for about 18 months. And eventually pulled all of them into kind of one grand file that I then burned.
Oh.
Along with my wedding dress, but like, don't tell my mother. She would freak out.
Yeah. That's so funny. I still have my wedding dress, and I was thinking,
we should burn it.
Okay, let's do it.
They more melt than burn, depending on the fabric. Full disclosure.
Really?
Yeah.
So it's just kind of like,
well,
it's just. I mean, that seems about right.
Exactly. Right. Yeah. So I burned this stack of writings along with my wedding dress in my backyard in my fire pit, and I collected the ashes, and then I took handfuls of ashes and I planted all these bulbs in my yard. And so every time they come up every year in the spring, it's this reminder of like new life coming from ashes.
That's beautiful.
So
yes.
this is one.
This
is one of those.
I'd love to hear it.
Sure. Dear Kelly Huckabee, it's been a while since we have spoken, but I find that you are a ghost that follows me nearly everywhere. Some days it feels as if you are watching over me. Other days, it feels as if you are trying to do me in. Regardless, it feels like a haunting. I'm ready to lay you down to rest now. Are you ready to rest? Kelly, you were so damn good. With you wrapped around me, I thought that I could do it perfectly enough to be loved, to be accepted, to be worthy, to be safe. You were beautiful with your long hair and your thin body and your perfectly proportioned diet. And you made it so easy for everyone around you. You were self-sacrificing, kind, endlessly patient, and very, very silenced. I hate you for silencing me. And yet you held space for me. You held space while my deepest self grew more bold. You held space while my inner voice grew louder. You took small, almost imperceptible steps toward new ideas and new ways of being. I'm not sure whether I took you by the hand or you took me, but either way, we journeyed down a new path that slowly, by degrees, led us to the brink of ourselves. We came to the edge, to the place where the path ended, to the cliff. We jumped because we had to. We jumped because we decided that being small was not a virtue. And when we landed, the world went dark. We plunged through the earth to the space in between all things. You took my hand, touched it to your cheek, smiled. And when I awoke, I was alone. I want to remember you fondly, to tell myself a healing story. I want to remember that you always kept a secret space for me. I want to remember that you never sought to erase me. I want to remember that you never crushed my spirit. I want to remember that you did the best you could. And when the time came, you laid your life down so that I could live. Speak to me about your darkness. I will hold your hand in the descent. Let's kiss our grief on the mouth like a lover. Let us call it all good, all for the sake of healing, all for the sake of breaking us open in order for the light to shine in. You were not wasted. You were a story I needed to explore to become myself. So rest, my darling. You have done your job. I can take it from here.
Absolutely beautiful.
Thank you.
And poetic and real and deep, and I relate to that so much.
Definitely.
By Helene Childress.
Yes.
Hello.
Yeah.
Wow. So what are you doing now? I know you do moon circles.
I do.
So tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I did my training through the Wild Woman Project a little over a year ago, and did my training through that project because it is so tied with exploration of the divine feminine. And for my own background and tradition, that was something that was sorely lacking, that I desperately needed to reconnect with. But my intent from the beginning with my moon circles was to create queer normative space. At the time that I was going through training, I had several friends that were in the midst of either social transition or medical transition, trans men, and they were separately, I was having these conversations where they were just mourning the loss of female-only space, a female-only community.
Right.
And feeling like in the midst of their transition, they were completely barred from these spaces, but they didn't know how to not be connected, right, to those spaces. So I wanted to create a space that was trans inclusive. I also really wanted to flip the paradigm. Often when you go into women's circles, it's very heteronormative. The majority of people are straight and cisgender, and I wanted to flip the percentage. So yeah, I wanted my circle to be 90% queer folks and maybe 10% straight folks. That seems like a great balance for me. So initially when I started leading circles, I led them out of my home because I was able to be sure that the bathroom situation was appropriate for everyone who was attending. It also just made it so that I knew that the only people that were coming were people that I knew were coming in, knowing the intent of the circle, being willing to hold space in that kind of context. But then I eventually transitioned over to Seed to Star and have been holding circles there now for over a year.
Yes. Seed to Star Collective in Avondale Estates. Yes. It is my favorite place on earth. It
is. Oh my gosh, it just has the sweetest energy and the kindest, most lovely people. I mean, they're fantastic. And also have gender neutral bathrooms, which is perfect. So I lead monthly new moon circles.
I went last night. It was, I loved the crowd. It was very inclusive.
It is.
It was exactly I was like, I'm with my people.
Yes, exactly. And truly that was it. It was like kind of in the aftermath, like post-divorce. I mean, legit, you were like the first person I had met in real life that I was like, oh my God, we have the same story.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
So hard to find. And you know, I think for me, it was like, I was just needing connection with other queer people.
Exactly.
Oh, it was so, I just needed it so much. And especially in like a, you know, context that was spiritual, but not religious and not dogmatic, but allowed me to really, you know, tap into my intuition, and I couldn't find it. So I made it. You know, cause I couldn't find what I was looking for on my own. So.
Right. Yeah. It was a hard transition for me to find my people as well.
Yes.
But oh my gosh, they're the best.
They are.
They're the best community, the best support.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. So let me look at your hand. You're right-handed?
I am right-handed.
I want you to hold it up here this way. And even though I've seen it so many times. So your writer's triangle is right here. This is your headline, your line of Mercury, and this is your line of stability right here. So we were talking earlier about the Enneagram.
Yes.
And I peeked at your hand.
Yes.
So you said you're type 1.
Yes.
And I was looking at your headline, and it goes pretty straight across this way. And a straight headline like that is usually someone who is very yes, no, black, white, give it to me straight, no bullshit kind of thing. Yeah. So it's interesting that makes a lot of sense for you.
Definitely.
I do want to talk about something I haven't mentioned on the show yet, and that is at the beginning of the life and headline. If they start separate over here, it's usually someone who is mentally independent at a young age in childhood.
Yeah.
How does that translate for you? Were you just willful, or?
Oh gosh, I was definitely a strong-willed child,
Yes.
for sure. But to tell you the truth, honestly, for me, it was more like I very much had an idea of who I was. I loved floating around outside and exploring and
can also be just
leading my own
freedom,
way. I was very free.
So, also knowing your story, your biography, this is your marriage right here.
Yeah.
And when you have the little lines coming off of a line like that, that is a break. Mm-hmm. So an affection line is a straight line on the outside of the hand, and if there are a little like fork coming off of it, that can be a break or divorce. And you have, exactly like me, I have another one coming at about the same time, yours. And these are really deep, impactful relationships. Mm-hmm. It's not all the dates or the experiences and things like that. So, this time period in between is usually a time of healing, which I'm sure you're going through too.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, thank you so much for being here and sharing. Of course. So where can we find you, Kelly, online?
Yes, so it's www.wildmoonatlanta.com.
Okay.
And you can also follow me on Instagram at Kelly_Binning. So on my website, you can find information on new moon circles, as well as links to Eventbrite listings when we do have active circles. I also lead yoga retreats. I'm not a certified yoga teacher. However, I lead ritual and do the behind the scenes planning on yoga retreats. So we have one to south of France in late September that is already sold out. But we are teasing our next one, which will be to a tropical destination.
Oh my goodness, will you tease it my way?
Definitely.
I want to go.
But April 2020 will be our next one. And it will actually have a lot more capacity. So we'll be able to take up to 24 people.
Maybe you need a palm reader.
I think we could totally use a palm reader, right?
Right, yes.
Yes, absolutely. And then not available through my website, but just through personal contact. I do Reiki healing as well. Also love pulling tarot, reading astrological charts, and doing oracle card readings.
All the things.
Yes.
All the woo.
Yes, all the woo. I love all the
woo. Wild woo women.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, howl at the moon from time to time.
Right.
Yeah.
Of course. All right, thank you guys for watching another Handful of Stars show. My book, Handful of Stars, Palmistry Guidebook, and Handprinting Kit is coming out October 15th, 2019. And we will see you next time. I'm gonna do both hands.